Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Widowhood, dating online comes with challenges. Do you know the warning signs? Do you know the preventive measures that you should have before dating? Do you know what catfishing is? If you're interested in this, which I know you are, you want to pay attention to this next episode. AJ, who is a professional in this arena, has tips that you want to hear. Let's get into this conversation now. Hello, AJ. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Hello, how are you?
It's Friday. We're recording this, and I'm feeling good. How about you?
I'm always well. Thank you for asking. Excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. When you hear welcome to the Widowhood, what was the ticker take in your mind? Like what popped up first?
It's interesting when you see the words come across, there is no distinction between widows versus widowhood. I think about it more so is immediately, where can I help? What can I do? And that's usually my first thought is, I don't look at stereotypes. I don't look at other labels or anything like that. My focus is, how can I help, and how can I help our listeners get where they want to go and grow?
Okay, that's fair. And it's interesting that goes in line with what we're going to talk about today, which is the catfishing, identity fraud, and things of that nature, because a lot of people in the widowhood community, male or female, are very vulnerable. And I think, and you and I both know that this is a conversation worth having. And you said in our pre-conversation, even more so coming up next to tax season and people maybe having a little extra money and feeling a little generous and making sure that they're not being duped. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Talking about fraud is near and dear to my heart. I've been in the fraud business, more so in detection, not committing fraud, for 24 years. And
thank you for making that distinction.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique career field, and I enjoy what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do, but I also understand there's a lot of people out there that are really skilled at what they do. They just may not have the proper tools to combat fraud, and that's where we come in today. Catfishing it's interesting. When you talk about catfishing, people think immediately it's about fishing, right? You think about you're going to a stream and you're throwing out the rod but in the fraud world, it's basically a scheme or a scam wherein someone creates a fake identity on a social media or a dating platform and really pretends to be somebody else with the ability to deceive. And as widows, widowers, a lot of times they get caught up into the catfishing because they're looking for companionship, support. And there is just this notion out there that when widows and widowers first become, they have all this amount of wealth coming through. And that's not the case. Most of the time, it's used to pay for funeral expenses, sadly, maybe hospital bills or other medical bills. But it also may be used for proactive measures of counseling. So it's not like we inherit this great windfall of money. And unfortunately, as a widower, as widows, we become ripe to become victimized into this catfishing scheme.
And thank you for explaining that. For someone that's not familiar, the idea, why would somebody want to catfish me? I'm not important. I don't have a lot, so I really shouldn't have to worry about that. What would you say to that type of response?
It happens to everybody. Different names, different races, different statuses, social, financial. It can happen to any. And a lot of times these fraudsters or these individuals that victimize their people will take the time to build up this storyline, to get to know you. And they don't really know in the end what you have financially. They don't know what you have in terms of the capacity to recognize that maybe who you're talking to isn't who they say they are. And it's unfortunate that there are people out there, but it is a large industry. It is unfortunate, a lot of people out there that just reel people in. And it's really unfortunate because when people get victimized, they lose their life savings, they become embarrassed, and now it brings a whole new psychological disadvantages because now they're ashamed and I'm not a licensed clinician or a doctor, but in some cases it may lead to suicidal thoughts because of the embarrassment. And that's very scary. And as we get closer to not only the tax season getting refunds, which hopefully everybody is getting, right? We need to be careful about who are we communicating? What are some of the warning signs that are out there? How do we detect it? And what do we do to prevent it? So a lot of what we do today is education, and that's important.
Thank you. You actually led into what I was interested in. Dating online is very normal. Connecting with people on social media platforms, chatting with people, especially because the algorithm has a way of bringing people to you that have similar interests. So I'm on my favorite social media platform. I'm liking somebody's content, and then I may message them and just say hello because they're sharing something of interest. What are some things that would stand out to you based on your background that this may not be a safe conversation or a safe space for me to be in?
So the world of dating is changed over the years, especially with apps, and depending on who you talk to, it can be a lot of fun, right? The idea and the thrill of meeting new people who are genuine. But in some cases, you do meet people who are not who they say they are. And like anything, if it's moving too fast, meaning they want to pressure you into providing them with their life story and telling them how you can help them overcome certain things. Most people, when they're dating, it's very natural. They're learning about their likes, their interests, and that's very similar to what the catfishing do. They do the same type of question. Their goal is to build up trust and comfort. Because at a later time, once everything is going well, that's when they start coming in with different stories. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to put my dog down. I need $5,000. I can't pay the vet bill. Can you help me out? Or my child is stuck in another country and I need to find an attorney. My favorite of all time, and this is an interesting one, is there was an individual, unfortunately, that was catfished, and they needed to withdraw cash and pay the doctor in cash in Panama. And the cash needed to be sent via UPS down to Panama so the doctor can perform an operation. By the way, what we had learned through our investigation, the patient was in a coma. And when I asked the victim, I said, "How were you contacted?" He said his granddaughter called him and told him that she was in a coma and that they needed to pay $25,000 in cash for the hospitalization. When you're in a relationship and when you're in certain schemes, a lot of times logic and reasoning sort of go out the window because you're not thinking about it. You're thinking about how can I help somebody, or I have a loved one that I care for. What can I do? And that's where these scams develop. What happened in the end with that particular case, we were able to convince the victim that his daughter was not in the coma, that when you're in a coma, you're not calling to talk, right? You're in a coma. And jokingly, I said, well, if a doctor's only going to take cash because he doesn't want to report the income for tax purposes down a panel, this is probably not the doctor that you want involved in the medical treatment.
Right.
But what we learned from this expense, and this is all part of the catfishing, it could be dating, it could be different types of scams, whether it's grandchild, grandparent, it could be family members, it could be unknown individuals online that you think you're talking to a banker, and it's not who they are. The key is to recognize early on the warning signs. So think about dating as we know. It's natural. You're excited about meeting the person. And it's been a while since I dated, so I can't tell, but I'm sure there's some FaceTiming going on. There's some videos, and it feels natural. But when somebody is hiding and they don't want to show their face, that's a warning sign. Or they're sending you photos of themselves and maybe in moments of action, whether they're at the beach, they're shopping or sitting outside a coffee shop, but they're not willing to go on the phone and FaceTime you. That's definitely a warning sign. And as we get deeper into our conversation and we talk about preventive measures and detection, I will give some really good tips on how you can use your own computer and look at some of the images that you've been receiving to determine if it is who they say they are or if it's a recycled image that may be used as part of a scam. So there's a lot of details.
And we want them all. You mentioned earlier about people feeling ashamed that once they've been catfished and not wanting to talk about it or share that. Why should they overcome that being ashamed and tell somebody what's happening?
Today, we look at social media as our presence. And sadly, sometimes the stories that we see on social media aren't really what's happening in real life. Where people are posting certain images, certain lifestyle, and they're portraying themselves in a particular live event. But in our situation, when it comes to that catfishing, when you look at the media and performances, people just have to get over the fact of they're vulnerable. And when you become ashamed, it's okay to say, I made a mistake. It's okay to forgive yourself. That is the number one key anytime any of us make a mistake. It's amazing how often we remember 10 bad things that went against us, but we struggle to remember 10 good things. It's because our minds are shaped and formed to remembering the negativity, the shame. Forgive yourself. We all make mistakes. And if we fall for a particular fraud scheme, again, sometimes you just don't have enough knowledge or education to understand what that scheme is, and you become victimized. It happens. Many other people are in the same position as you, but hiding from it, not talking about it, it does prolong when we talk about grief, because it is a form of grief. Shame, becoming victimized, you're upset about what's happened. It lingers in your mind. And if you were one of those individuals that actually provided large sums of money, that's a whole different dynamic of a discussion of shame. What I like to do is let's break it down into small detail. Did you provide any financial resources to the individual? What was the purpose? Does it make sense to you? And if you did, that's okay. You acted on with the information that you got, and you felt empowered enough to move forward and release the funds. The beauty is that's a one-time thing, maybe a couple times. You have the ability to stop it. by not allowing it to continue.
Okay. Do you find that men or women have a higher percentage of being catfished?
It's both. And in today's dating world, anything can happen. And unfortunately, some of the profiles that we are swiping to either like or we're not interested, some of those profiles may not be who they say they are. And what's happening here, and I think I saw the statistic somewhere, that if you have a social media platform like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, your likelihood to become victimized from identity theft or other fraud scheme is well over 40%.
Wow.
Because these fraudsters, what they do is they hone their craft in building up a case and identity of who their victims are. We're human. We like to post everything and anything. I'm at this restaurant here. My child did this. My dog rolled over or something like that. And all these great things that you're looking for to share that are warm and fuzzy. The fraudsters are looking at this and say, how can we build an identity case with this person? And so when they come into the catfishing scheme, they're acting with similar interests that you may have because they're following what you've posted and what you've shared. Nothing is ever truly deleted that you post on social media. You can remove certain things from a timeline or photo, but chances are somebody may have captured it, or in some really extreme cases have downloaded the data with that information to be used at a later time.
So they are literally profiling, watching the person before they engage. It's not like just all of a sudden. How have you been able to track like how long someone is researching, profiling someone before they engage them?
There's no blueprint in terms of how long does it take. It depends on if I go on to somebody's social media page that does a lot of posting on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. It doesn't take me long to figure out their life story, where they went to high school, who some of their friends are, what their interests are, and perhaps if there's a loss of a spouse or a loved one, they're taking note of that and they're looking at that as an opportunity to sort of gain your trust and leverage that against you. It doesn't take long. Sadly, if I were to pick some random profile on Facebook, somebody I don't know, and if they're a regular poster, I can pretty much gather their entire life story within the hour and start building a profile on a dating app or a social media that mimics some of their interests, some of their thought, to bring them in. And a lot of times what we do today is the art of storytelling and how we introduce ourselves to people. We open up that information to everybody. I can come and say, I've noticed we share the same interests. You lost a spouse, I lost a spouse. I'd like to learn a little bit more about your coping and how did you overcome. To the victim, it seems very genuine. They don't realize that there may be another motive behind that introduction. And they'll look at the profile photos, they'll look at some of the information, and they'll be like, this person looks genuine. They really seem to care. I want to talk to that person. And that's how it really begins, is that first storyline buildup.
Wow. I mean, I hear that makes me like want to just shut down all the social media, just shut it all down. But that's not realistic for me and maybe not for other people.
Sure.
What
Yeah.
are some ways to identify this or to prevent yourself from being taken advantage of like this?
There's several different things, what I call warning signs. If something is too good to be true, it usually is. And I know that's really hard because emotions are involved. And we have high hopes for somebody that we've met, and we see these possibilities of what they may become and how do we fulfill our companionship with that person. But if it's too over the top, the over complimenting you, the too much involved in telling you all the things that you want to hear, that may be a sign. Over flattery. Remember, dating should feel natural. There's no way that we're getting complimented every single day, all the time. Other areas is sometimes the refusal to meet. After a couple of weeks, sometimes people build a rapport with each other and that trust and say, let's meet, whether it's for a drink, whether it's for coffee, whether it's a walk in the park. But if you are a fraudster that's chasing down its victim, you're going to use a lot of different excuses to why you can't meet. Oh, I'm not feeling well today, or I've had a work emergency, my cat ran up the tree or something. Like when it becomes a pattern of the refusal of meeting with you, that is definitely a warning sign. The other part is inconsistent information. Dating is just collecting information all day, right? You're deciding whether you like what you hear, what you don't like, and you live with that. And you're trying to use that notion. I think it was 80% of the person, that you have to like and let go of the other 20 or something to that caliber, right? But if you start coming up and finding that there's just too much information that's inconsistent, where they say, my mother, my father, I no longer have a relationship with my father, and all of a sudden one day it's like, oh yeah, I just saw my father yesterday. You have to keep your radar open. Obviously, request for money is the number one red flag. Most dating relationships, unless you are really involved and you're living together or something, you're not requesting money. And this is not like, well, let's go out for dinner and I'll pick up the $200 tab. No, this is something that's much larger. I need $5,000 for an operation. I need this. I need that. Can you provide this to me? I will pay you back. Once the conversation turns to money or monetary, definitely a red flag. Now, it may be legitimate, it may be genuine, but usually in terms of catfishing, monetary discussion, red flag. The other part, this is where I would love to leave a tip for your listener, is if they're sending you unusual or hard to verify photos. Now, a lot of times we get photos through email, different direct messages, text, but some of these photos, either they look almost too perfect or there's just something that doesn't make sense. And there is a website that is out there that I believe started, maybe 16, 17 years ago, called Tin Eye. And it's spelled T as in Tom, I as in ice cream, N as in Nancy, E as in elephant, Y as in yam, E as in elephant. And what this is like a reverse image type search where you can basically take the image that you receive and put it into this database. And it will almost instantaneously, in maybe a few minutes, look to under all this algorithm to see if that same photo is being used anywhere on the internet.
Get out of here.
It may not be 100% perfect, but it gives you food for thought, right? And a lot of times catfishing individuals, when they look at their victim, they're recycling the same photo, the same story. And chances are your photo is out there. It will provide some information and you can ask better clarifying questions. If it doesn't make sense to you, trust your gut and ask. Because of the emotional human element that we have in dating, we almost don't want to believe something. That's why they say love is blind.
I can relate to that. When I started dating, I tried to put some precautions in place because this was uncharted territory and afraid of being vulnerable. And tell me what you think of the things that I did. So one, I never used my real phone number. I used a DBA phone number like Google Voice or something like that. I didn't put everything on my profile because I found that people would try to create this persona based on what I listed there. And the third thing, I'm one of five siblings, and I allowed two of my sisters to be actively involved in me looking at different profiles, getting their input. And there were a couple of people that early on we were talking, and then supposedly was a business person. He was out of country. He needed money from New York and he couldn't get to it. But supposedly his daughter was there and his business partner. When you talk about things not lining up, so I was like, I need some money too. And I started asking him for some money and he didn't talk to me. But those are some things that I did, having my sisters involved in the dating app. And would those be helpful or other different things that you would recommend for people in this dating app climate?
Absolutely. And you were fortunate to have the sisters to confide with that you trusted for their honest assessment. Is this person too good to be true? And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have that.
Mm.
So they have to kind of feel around themselves. You may have a close friend. You may have somebody that you trust to give you their perception. And that's great. But again, sometimes that doesn't always work because maybe they get interested and say, well, wait a minute, why are you going there? I want that person. That guy seems like amazing. I want to try to do that too, right?
Wow.
Dating is just so challenging today than ever before. The way you went about looking and be selective on what you put up, that's you taking a step back and saying, I want to protect myself. And those are preventive tips that you put in place without even realizing that you're not giving everything to the phone. A lot of people, when they are on social media, they tell their entire life story. And that is ripe to become victimized at a later time. When we lose our jobs, when we lose a pet or a loved one, or we just have a terrible day and we post about it and you say you're struggling, it's giving somebody else an opportunity to kind of swoop in and try to fix and address it and use the emotions that you're going through against you. I love what you've done. You trusted your sisters. You had it from a different perspective. And I know how difficult that is because you may have had discussions where they were like, looks a little off. And you're like, no. It's perfect.
No. If they said it, my block game was strong because I had been married with my late husband. We'd been together 32 years. I had no idea how to navigate dating in this climate. I mean, my sisters had been dating, so I trust them. So what they were saying, so I was like, okay, buy with that. I don't need any of that. What are some other, those were my top 3 preventive measures. What are some other preventive measures that you would recommend?
Yeah, I love the fact that don't put your entire story out there. Don't list every sort of, maybe list just the top few that are near and dear to you. You don't want to give somebody the opportunity to make a decision of who you are without meeting them. And that's the whole point of dating, right? You get together, you meet, you learn about, it's like an interview. And that's more of a comfort. But when you rush into it and you put everything and anything out there, that gives that opportunity for somebody to say, this looks like a right person. And if they find out, unfortunately, that you have been widowed, you are a widower, there's a whole different perception that goes through their mind to say, we may have found what the term is a whale. Somebody who probably inherited a lot of money at some point through their loss. And what they're going to then start doing is building up that relationship with you and claim most of these catfishing scams, you may hear that they have lost a spouse or somebody really near and dear to them because they're looking to leverage that connection with you. Once that trust is formed and there's credibility, that's when they start asking for the money, the financial part. And today, because dating is so tough, they don't want to wait months and months of trying to build up a rapport with somebody. It usually takes anywhere from a couple days to maybe even a few weeks and maybe even a month or two before they start coming through. If something feels off, this is the best preventive measure that you can take. It usually is. Listen to your gut. I have a saying that I ask myself in the fraud world on any transaction I look at, any fraud scheme. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it make sense? If any of those three questions, the answer is no, I'm not sure, then you're onto something. Your gut is telling you something is not right. That is the best preventive. Yeah, and educate yourself. Learning more about the dating perills out there, listening to podcasts. Some people have some really humorous stories about dating. I have some myself when I was dating that I didn't even understand what I was doing, but my radar went on. It was okay. I'll share it with you.
You got to share one of these stories. You can't just say that and not share it, AJ. What?
So early on, when I became a widower, I was 33 years old, and I was very engaged with my daughter at the park, and that type of dad I am. And she is my everything. I was engaged, and kids are great when they parallel play with each other. They meet each other on the playground. They talk. They role play. They fantasize certain things. And my daughter had met and befriended this one gal, and was talking to the mom, and the mom at the end said, "Hey, could we exchange numbers? Let's get together." And I did. And again, my radar, I'm thinking genuine, right? I don't know what her motive is, right? I'm thinking daughter's had a good time playing. Maybe we can arrange another time. A couple days later, she texts me and says, "What are you doing Saturday night?" And I texted her back and said, "Well, my daughter and I are available. What do you got in mind?" And she says, in a return response, "Well, maybe we can leave the kids home and you and I go out." And that's when I was like, huh? So I called her. Instead of going by the text messaging, I called her. And she's like, "AJ, why are you calling me? Just text me." I said, "I'm sorry, I haven't dated prior to before cell phones had text messaging. I can't read between the lines." But my radar went up immediately. I said, what was this woman's motive? She knew I was a widower. She knew I had a single daughter. She'd met my daughter. Is there something? I deleted her phone number from us, and we never saw or heard from the individual again. So when it comes to that, again, the emotions, I was excited at first because as your children play and with others, you're like, oh, anytime when you're dating and you bring kids into the element, it's like a whole nother ball game.
Absolutely.
Too. And if you see the kids are getting along right away, and you're like, okay, great. We now have an opportunity maybe to knock down that one barrier. But it was a very strange return of messages, and it was my first inclination to realize. Now, I don't think she was catfishing me per se. I think she had some different motives, but in my gut, something just didn't sit right.
Okay.
You wanted me to exchange numbers, so for maybe future arrangements with the kids, and now you're asking me the first point, well, maybe just leave the kids home.
So it really wasn't about the children at all.
I don't believe so. And let's be honest, when you're a single parent, you go out and have a great evening, you come home, and what's the next thing you got to do? You got to pay the babysitter. It's not easy. It is not easy, right?
Not at all.
So, again, I also could become victimized as well. But recognizing these warning signs, trusting your gut, makes all the difference in the world. Now, somebody may come and say, well, AJ, what if you missed out on an opportunity? Well, then it wasn't the right opportunity. Dating should not be difficult. It should be natural. It should flow. You have to work at it, but in theory, it should be fun, engaging. But sadly, there are people that have different motives on what they're looking to do. Another really interesting preventive measure that I haven't spoken about is the beauty of social media is information is everywhere. If somebody's sending you photos, start playing around on the internet in the dating app or maybe even through Facebook and see if those same photos are being shared with a different profile. And in some cases, some of those photos are actually recycled between multiple people. And it might be in different cities, different countries, right? They're hedging on the fact that you're not going to do your research and find them. If you're into detective type movies or crime scene type things, you got to put your hat on and say, is this person genuine? Now, I hope at the end of our discussion, people are going to be like so afraid to date. That's not what we're here for. We're here to help educate and arm people with information that they can use to at least better protect themselves, but ask better questions. And in a situation where if you see that same photo on somebody else's profile, it is okay to ask that individual, why is it on another profile? Walk me through this. What mostly will happen, either you'll get some sort of far-fetched excuse, which is filled with inconsistencies, or they're going to completely ghost you because they know they've been caught. And going back to the question you asked earlier, is when you're ashamed or disappointed like that, recognize that you have the opportunity to forgive yourself. It wasn't your fault. You were able to recognize it at a later time and stop it from becoming much granular. Now, there are people who are more activists that may go out there and try to exploit that particular profile or individual. My recommendation is don't. There are a lot of people, especially in the fraud world, that are very dangerous. It's easier to just walk away or let them walk away than it is to pick a fight. And from a safety standpoint, how you heal from a catfishing scheme is knowing that you took the proper steps to move on.
That's a lot. Two more questions I have. And this is a question that comes up very often. When you are a widow or widower, that is part of your story. When people are divorced, they get to easily talk about that. But there is a concern of someone thinking you have means when you are a widow or widower. Is there a recommendation of when I should talk about those things in this organic relationship before trying to find out if this person is genuine?
Whatever helps you sleep better at night.
Okay.
That is the best answer I can give. And we connect with different people every day. And sometimes we connect instantly where you feel comfortable sharing certain information. Sometimes we may be a little bit more reserved by not sharing that, well, I lost a spouse or I lost a loved one. You have to kind of get a feel. Trust your gut. Trust your instinct, but also recognize when it doesn't feel right, it's not right, and stop it right then and there. If you're unsure and you're conflicted, exactly what you did. Confide with a family member that you trust, a close friend. I'm getting a lot of mixed signals here. That will help diffuse some of that. What do I share? How often do I share it up front? There are some people, when they become widow or widower, the next week, they're looking for companionship. And that's okay, right? we watch too many movies in our lifetime that state you should never do that. You need X amount of time to grieve. But it's really about closure and how do you move on. And there is no blueprint of what you should say, what you shouldn't say. It's whatever feels natural. And that's the beauty of dating. And that's why two people who are unique confide with each other. They learn to trust each other. Most relationships out there are really legitimate and they're not fraud driven. But by being educated and armed with knowledge, you can just have your little radar on and say, okay, you know what? This looks a little weird. I'm not going to disclose that I'm a widow or widower yet. I want us to see where this is going before I indulge in my personal life. Again, whatever helps you sleep better at night, knowing that you're doing all the things to help you not only grieve, but cope and eventually move on. That's the most important.
Thank you. You mentioned about working in fraud. How, if I was being catfished, I gave money away, how do I report that? What does that look like?
That's a great question, right? And the feeling when you give money away, it happens. You can notify the local police department or put it into a report. Now, their job is not to go get you your money back. Their job is to take the report and look to see if there are other victims that have similar situations that you're in. And what these investigations can take time. That's the number one thing. Number two, you may want to change some of your profile information, make you less vulnerable in the future. Maybe you focus more on meeting people more locally as opposed to meeting people globally, right? Every opportunity has a reaction. You make some changes based on your experiences. From a financial part, more likely than not, the money is gone because you have given it to somebody who either A, truthfully doesn't exist or is long gone. And I know people say, well, I sent a wire or I Zelled them money. Can't they find that person? The answer is yes. They can find who that person is from a certain perspective. But these fraudsters are really good at masking their location and information that the police, if you think about logically, if they have more than 20 cases that are coming in, it's hard for them to investigate each and every one of them. But if they're seeing a common denominator, that's when they may engage with other law enforcement and subject matter experts in crime to look into to see if there's anything out there that they may be able to identify. Obviously, once that individual may be arrested, there may be an opportunity for that person to make restitution and pay back its victims. But it's very costly. You got to hire attorneys. You also are dealing with the emotional part of that grief that you gave money. I have seen stories and I have been a part of cases where people have released over hundreds of thousands of dollars to not understanding that these individuals are not who they are, and they are extremely remorseful. There are different areas to help get your money back, right? And at the time, what I have advised, if you're still in communication before you tip them off that you're on to them, ask for the money back. Ask for a percentage. Say, I know you may not be, what are the chances of you returning my money? And if you do it in a way that is respectful, not threatening, you never know. They may maybe you do have somebody that says, I don't want any trouble. I'm going to focus on my next victim. I'm just going to return your money and have you go away in exchange for that. There's a lot of different avenues. But in my experience, once that money is gone, it is gone.
It is gone.
File the police report. Let them guide you on the next steps.
Thank you. I want to circle back to something you said. The goal is not to scare somebody out of dating. It's to educate them in the process. I can say for myself personally, I met my chapter 2 online on a dating app. But some of the things that I did preventive and just being aware helped me with each person I swiped left before I got to him. And we chatted for a couple of days. And something you said I learned early on, I kept my parameters, my space. If it was not within 50 miles, I did not want to connect because to me, the goal was to meet in person. And I learned early on in some conversations that didn't sit well that if we didn't connect in the first week in person, I was okay to just move on because I can't come on camera, I can't do this and all of those things. I just had very little time for that level of activity. But we had been chatting on the app for about a week, and then we just met up for coffee real quick after work and just had a conversation, and then just kept connecting, and it did grow organically. We dated for 3 years, and then we did get married. But it is possible to meet somebody online. I have several friends who are still married that met their other half online, but it does take being wise.
It does. And dating is a wonderful time. It's basically resetting priorities. What is it you want? And in times, whether it was a loss, a divorce, or just a breakup.
Right.
Meeting people is exciting. And most people we meet aren't fraudsters.
Correct.
And today is more about educating people on what warning signs, detection, and preventive measures they can do when they are into the dating space, what to look for. There is no right or wrong on the approach. Again, do what makes you happy, what makes you feel good. But like everything else we do in life, go with caution. Right? We get into a car every day and we drive to work or we drive to an errand. We're driving with caution. We're looking around, making sure that nobody's coming in the oncoming traffic or somebody didn't cut me off. We're driving with that caution. That's the same thing with dating. It's exciting. I love it. I love the opportunities to hit that reset button, to reprioritize my life, and to look to say, I want to make some changes.
AJ, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been so informative. Did we cover everything that you thought that would be important in this conversation?
We did. I would tell you the key takeaways again is anytime that you're dating, just pay attention to some of those warning signs, right? Are they being overly friendly, over complimenting you? Are they asking you to talk about financial, monetary discussions? Most of the time in dating, we don't talk about monetary, but those are some of the warning signs. And how you can detect it again is using certain tools that we have with the internet, right? And taking a look at some of those photos that may have been shared with you and going onto the site TinEye and just copy the photo into it and just see if there's an image out there, maybe under another profile. Again, all you're doing is validating the person. That's all it is. Like we do and we validate our doctors that we go to for medical. Seldom do we ever validate people that we date until it's too late. And the last thing I would tell you is ask yourself those 3 questions. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it make sense? And if any of that does not say yes, if there's a no or unsure, you're probably onto something. Thank you for the opportunity to come here today, and I will be more than happy to send you my information. If any of your listeners have questions, I'll be more than happy to return a response.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.